Oh, it works. Smooth transition. We're back. Episode 22.
All
Hey,
right.
how you doing?
Hold on, I need to turn on. I need to turn off the stream volume. I was watching it.
Oh no.
5 minutes now.
Yeah, how you doing? How are things?
Yeah, we're gonna pretend we weren't just talking.
uh, um, it's been another 2 months since our last one. Keeping it nice and consistent. um,
Whatever, man. It is what it is.
it is what it is. This is when we feel like it, we do one. That's the vibe. Doesn't mean the content isn't
Yeah,
bad or good. Sorry.
yeah, it's true. This is true.
Today we're talking about. I asked the question: should our population size be controlled? I think that's a very debatable one, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. And I also don't think you wouldn't really have this conversation with your friends or family regularly. Depends on your type of family, I guess.
Yeah, probably not.
I think the reason why it sparked into my head was because of the recent pandemic, obviously, and every day on the news you're always seeing X amount of deaths, and it's like, right, so how many people are actually being born into this world? I want to compare the stats and see, are we actually on a really steep rise of population, or is it actually sort of more gradual?
Have you
Yeah,
looked at a graph? I haven't looked at a graph.
that. So if we want to start off with the graph, our
Why
yearly
not?
really growth rate has actually gone down. So I think it was the boomer age, 1960s and 70s, is where it was a yearly growth rate around like 2%. And then from then on, it started dropping. And right now, we're at about just hovering above 1%.
Okay.
So I think that's estimated roughly like 81 million people per year that increases by.
I want to see what the curve's like.
Yeah, of course. If I could share my screen quickly as well, so we can get. But yeah, so I'm on the Worldometers, the classic Worldometers website, which shows current world population, which is 7.8 billion, which is
Hmm.
nuts. And it says just today population is 195,000 grown. This year 21 million. So obviously we are still growing. There's more births than deaths. I don't know. I think, in my eyes, if we just sort of dive straight into the question, should
Yeah.
population size be controlled? In my eyes, yes, to a certain extent. And I'm not saying like the extreme to the one child policy that we saw in China. I mean, jokes aside, that I think if we look at the China's population is 1.4 billion, right? The nearest
Hmm.
one after India and China, which are both 1.4, 1.3, is 300 million. So there's obviously something, they're pumping out a lot of children over there, and I
Yeah.
don't think our Earth can actually keep up with the amount of mouths to feed.
Well, I mean, it can't, can it? It's never. I don't think it ever was. It was never sort of able to hold this number of people, and I think that's been known for a long time. But it's just one of those things. Like it's not ever been feasible, or it's not been seriously considered, or like ethically considered to be a viable solution.
Yeah, and um, I think I'm trying to word myself clearly here, or carefully, so I don't offend anyone. But I think
Yeah.
the reason why I think there should be a cap on the number of children you should have for the moment is because we've just seen a huge decrease in our food supply, whether that be fish, animals, even just habitats like forests. You always see the deforestation stack flying in your face, and all
Mm.
these things are due to our population increase. And so the best way to solve that sort of issue would surely be to cap that population, no?
Yeah, I mean, how feasible is it though? Realistically, like,
Oh,
what
it won't ever
what are you gonna?
happen. It won't ever happen
Yeah.
because each country has their own laws and it has to get passed through, and it's ridiculous. I don't think we'd ever see it happen unless like the world united into one government, which wouldn't even be a good thing. But I just think it's so
Well,
hard to control.
I mean, there could be something like I don't know. Something like the EU, but worldwide, where they sort of got to decree laws. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Maybe a
true.
possible
Actually, like a
ban.
big pact. Yeah, but then imagine trying to sign like all the countries together, like over 200.
No, I agree. Like it's not going to happen, but especially with current climate, current world leaders, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not going to work very well. They just. I don't think they'd cooperate and get to the point very well.
Yeah. That's why, I think something should be, restricting our population growth in some way. When China brought in the one child policy, back in the early 2000s, I think it was. Um, I think that was a good thing, but I think the execution on the idea was poorly planned because you start to see, I
You
believe it
think it was
was.
a good thing?
I think the idea was good, but the execution was poor. I think you saw. I think it was all the girl babies were always sold, or a lot. It
The
encouraged a lot
girl
of human
baby.
trafficking. Yeah, because men were more important to keep the family, name in the world in existence. And so
Right.
if you're born with a girl, they get rid of the child in disgusting ways. I think that obviously this whole one child policy encouraged that sort of behavior, which isn't ideal, obviously.
The thing is, though, like if you look into what happened, especially during the earlier years of the policy being active, the way they had to enforce it, or the way they enforced it, was forced abortions and sterilizations. Like obviously, very clearly not ethical, right?
Yeah, hence why I'm saying the execution was poor. Like it was horrible. Whereas the
But how
actual,
would
I
you how
think
would you go about it then?
I'm not. I don't know. I'm not. I haven't thought of the logistics. I just think the idea of I wouldn't say one. I'd say 2 to 3 children per family makes more sense than families having 5, 6, 7 kids. It becomes to a point where the world literally can't feed this many people at the moment. We haven't found a way to sustainably feed 7.8 billion people, let alone when it reaches 10 billion people, 11 billion. Like it's just going to get worse and worse. And so the lines between poverty and let's just say middle class, blah blah blah, will get worse and worse because it seems to be a current trend where um, a lot of third world countries are having the most amount of babies. So then the population is growing in these lower income countries, lower developed countries, and it's making it harder for the gap to be squeezed. Like I feel like we're focusing too much on reproducing rather than like uniting or at least getting the whole world on the same sort of level playing field, which would also never happen for obvious reasons.
What do you mean level playing field?
Like no third world countries, no where all the countries are sort of on a utopian sort of level, I guess, where technologies, base level technologies, around the whole world, where everyone understands the internet, everyone understands mobile phones, basic technology, things like that. But at the moment, the discrepancy between USA and somewhere like let's say Nigeria, no, like Nigeria, somewhere in like a third world country, you
Right.
can tell the difference. Like if you set foot, you take a plane, you land in USA, you can tell it's a well developed country. Then when you go to Africa, it's a completely different story. And it's strange for me to see. I'll read out the stats here. So the top five, from between 2015 and 2020. So this is really fresh data. The highest top five countries with the highest average birth rate were Somalia. Oh no, sorry, Niger, Somalia, Congo, Mali, and Chad. All in Africa, and all were between 7 and 6 children per family. That's
But surely
insane.
that's just a result of them not receiving the aid and support that they need. So, like you said, it's coming from places where their poverty is more, um, where it's a lot. There's a lot more poverty in the area, right? So they don't have the resources, or they don't have access to the education which
Yeah,
teaches them stuff like contraception. They don't have access to contraception, um, and human nature will out. People are going to end up having children. It's kind of inevitable.
yeah, you're
And
right. Yeah,
just like Mia said in the chat, it's definitely not possible currently. Because yeah, I mean, there's so many ethical issues involved with this, like so many. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of just a thing, if you outlaw something, then suddenly, you make it, you don't reduce the chance of it happening. It's like the whole idea with the war on drugs, right? So making cannabis or weed illegal doesn't mean people don't smoke it or farm it or just deal it. It just means that the that sort of traffic isn't mandated, and then there's no like control over there's no like rules, there's no regulations um monitoring that kind of those kind of interactions. So like I just yeah, I think there's just definitely too many issues right now, right?
There's too many factors, yeah. I think you made a good point. Ultimately, it's down to the education of why these third world countries aren't or are producing more than the average, let's say, UK citizen. It's because of
Well, yeah,
education and
education and
resources. Yeah.
yeah, education and resources, yeah, that's right. But that's the thing, like I just the way that the world works, you just don't have that level of unity where you'd be able to sort of wipe that out. There's definitely, there's charities and governments provide aid to other countries, like yeah, but to the level that would be necessary to sort of actually put a stop to this kind of unwarranted population rise, probably not.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's viable. Like I said, I don't think we'll ever see it. Just, I think there should be some sort of mass education and even recommendation of saying, hey, if we keep this up, this is going to make the world worse. Because at the moment, we're trying to fight so many different issues like climate change, becoming more sort of sustainable, where
Mm.
adding to the population isn't really helping the solutions.
Honestly, sort of building off that point, I think you raise like a good idea. Like I think that during sort of sex education, even in the more developed countries, there's still a lot of stigma and like embarrassment sort of surrounding that, especially from the children's side. And I think a lot of the schools and a lot of the education systems don't have well like fortified educational paths to sort of deliver the knowledge that they need. So I think maybe it could be part of sex education, and I think as a general rule, it needs to be improved because think back to when we had sex education, the amount that they sort of beat around the bush or didn't tell us, or it was delivered poorly, and then there's a whole load of stuff which women aren't told. There's a lot of, if you think back, like there was a lot more stuff about how boys and guys deal with puberty and stuff like that. That was like the basis of sex education. There wasn't a lot of stuff surrounding the more female side. And I think there could also be like they could have another unit where they talk about how, the how having a child affects the world as a whole. You could say, like just sort of raising awareness to it. Because if
Exactly. Yeah.
it's like if you put it into their heads at that sort of age, then at least they will have some sort of knowledge gained by the time they come out of school, and they that would hit them at the right time, so that if they came out of school they would be perhaps and they're like they're getting into that age where they'd be able to, or possibly would have, like a baby, whether intentional or not. You'd hope that that knowledge would be easy to access for them because it's pretty recent.
Yeah, exactly. That's just all about having that availability up to that knowledge, but also, yeah, you bring a good point of just the general awareness of the ethical considerations of having a child, not just for you, but for the actual world, the climate that we're currently in. You know, got to weigh it up rather than just, is it good for me in my life? Is it actually good for the world right now?
That's the
Because,
thing, is
yeah,
most people just see it subject. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. Continue.
no, that was it. That was it.
I was just gonna say, like, I don't. I just think that people. It's so easy to think subjectively in more things, more scenarios than just this, right? But I think as sort of like a prospective parent, you'd probably be thinking like, you don't have these thoughts of like, oh, what impact do I have on the world? What impact will this child have on other people? It's more sort of like, do I want a baby? And it's really easy to sort of distance yourself and think, it's that whole sort of mindset of, if everyone else is doing it, then I might as well. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
instead of being the one person that makes the change, you're the person that decides not to because everyone else isn't. Like, you don't want to be the outlier. You want to sort of conform or just take the easy choice.
yep,
So I think a lot, and I'm not like sort of trying to sound like I'm on a high horse at all. Like, that's something that applies to a lot of different concepts, and a lot of them I would have fallen on the lazier side of that sort of argument as well.
mm,
It's difficult, but I think that's just something that would happen naturally. Like, it's so easy to do disassociate yourself from sort of the the larger picture, as it were, I suppose.
yep. Because you just get so caught up in your own bubble, so you don't even think about the repercussions into the actual whole, taking into consideration the whole world rather than just
Yeah.
themselves, like you said.
But I think also, one thing to note is I think there's also a lot of people in our generation. So have you talked to like many people about their, ideas of whether they want to have children or not, or their principles and that kind of thing?
Only a handful of people in our friendship group. I haven't really gone to a lot of people and said, "Oh, you having kids?"
No, I mean, I don't know, just like part of a conversation,
No,
like if you're
yeah,
talking
no,
to someone.
I don't. No, I
But
never bring it up. No.
okay. Well, some like I usually it's a question that I probably ask to like a few of my close friends, just sort of like curiosity, like, or just works its way into a conversation. But it's interesting because I think a lot more people nowadays are sort of warming to the idea of not having children, or because of the way we're raised in such a environmentally conscious setting, because we're pretty much in the generation where we're dealing with the consequence of the previous ones where world's kind of dying, population's rising too much, everything's kind of going to shit. But so we're far more aware of that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of people, or like far more than in previous generations, the last two or three, are sort of saying, yeah, no, I don't feel like I'd want to have a child, or I'm happy like not having children, that kind of thing.
And that's a good thing. Not the actual that not specifically that let's say topic, but people actually questioning the social norms is actually a good thing because it means people are actually waking up a little bit and thinking for themselves rather than getting sucked into the we'll just say social norms.
Yeah, yeah, and then that and the sort of scenario that we're in right now,
Oh yeah, COVID, yeah, pandemic.
No, 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 just like well, I mean, COVID, and just the scenario with environmental
Yeah,
well-being, the whole thing of it not be it's irreversible in,
yeah,
I don't know how many years it is now, but yeah, basically it's like a ticking time bomb. And
20 years I think, something like that, 2040 something.
yeah, the sad reality of it is though that even if as individuals we decide to sort of say, oh, let's not. I mean, obviously this isn't going to happen. This is completely hypothetical. But if sort of half the world of people under the age of like 18 said, "Yeah, we're not going to have children," then even because of the, I know this is straying more into environmental issues, but it, it would it's not really on its own as an isolated thing. It's not going to do anything because the environment's still being damaged by big corporations and governments that are sort of turning a blind eye to bad practices and just dumping waste into the ocean, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I guess that's literally a whole nother sort of debate you could have in itself.
Yeah.
With recent sort of documentaries being released as well about that.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like a domino effect, really. Like,
Exactly, yeah, it all links together.
yeah, yeah,
But one thing that I think is key to note here is after the Second World War, there must have been a lot of, I don't want to say propaganda, but encouragement to have children, because between the I think it was between, let's see, um have a look here. Yeah, so between the ages, oh sorry, the years 19, like I said before at the start of the podcast, between like 1960 and let's say 1959, 1999, so 30 years, our
Mm,
population doubled from 3 billion to 6 in 30
right.
years. And that's, is that 30 years or 40? Oh, my maths is awful. 40 years. So, you know, the fact that the World War happened, and then, I'm guessing, I feel like there was sort of an encouragement to the world to, repopulate a little bit. And that's why we saw a big increase from 1959, onwards. And then since then, it's been slowing down with, recent environmental issues coming out. Yes, so since the 1990s, it's been on a nice downtrend. I say nice, in my opinion, it's good to see a
Yeah.
variation in population, because as we discussed, there's, varying issues with a
No, I
large
mean, I
population.
agree. It's good to see it's not soaring still, but
Yeah,
if you look at the prediction figures, it's still mean the impact because of the obviously the way that generations work. We're still going to sort of be having a massively growing population for the next few decades. Like it's not going to slow down considerably, and it's not like it has an immediate effect. So the mindset of our generation will only really have an effect in what, like 30 years, 40 years,
yeah,
and then it will
exactly.
start
Yeah,
to properly slow down.
yep,
But the sort of, yeah, it's good. It's good. It's on a down. It's just, I don't know. It's all a bit. It's all a delayed reaction, so we don't really know.
yeah. It's delayed data, like you said. But yeah, so I just want to go back to the countries that I said in Africa. Yeah, let's just go with Somalia, Congo, those sort of countries with the highest average birth rate. Why do you think? Why do you think that is? Why do you think they have 5 to 6 children per family?
Just what I said earlier, man. I think it's when you're living in a third world country, obviously not speaking from experience. There's a lot less information. There's a lot less resources, and there's a lot less education. So one, you probably wouldn't be aware of the issue of overpopulation, right?
Yeah,
Nice. You probably you wouldn't be aware of um, contraception. You wouldn't be aware of how to get contraception like
yep,
easily, right? And then also, I think there's a lot of in a lot of cultures and a lot of religions all over the world, including stuff like Christianity. At times, I think there's a massive sort of push of how you live your life, and I think it might be an outdated belief, but generally when I think of Christianity, I think that they expect, man marries wife, they have children, you have families, that's the whole thing. And I think that's sort of true through multiple religions and cultures. I think still in a lot of cultures, for example, in these third world countries, it might still be like a strong idea for that, like a strong ideal that you have many children. Like
mm,
there's loads of countries or cultures where a man might have like multiple wives or just literally just as many children as he could have like physically.
yeah,
Maybe that's still taking place because that's just how life is there, you know what I mean?
yeah. The cultural norms. Yeah,
Whereas yeah, the places which are more developed and have access to the more education, they're probably more aware. So like us, right, we're very fortunate, and we've had that education, and we're aware of the situation. And I don't know about you, but I personally am not like massively keen on having kids in the future.
I mean, it's
But
if I'm honest, it's not even in my mind. Like, it's not, because I know right now, if I was to have a child, that child's quality of life would be nowhere near where I would want it to be or it deserves. So why would I?
do
It
you think
doesn't
so?
make sense. It doesn't make sense to have a child right now for me.
You think it's a direct impact? Like it's real? You can see it straight away.
What do you mean?
Like you think that if you had a child now, you'd be able to notice that their quality of life wasn't as good as yours just because of overpopulation.
No, so if I got a phone call right now and someone said, "You're a father, your baby's just been born," right? Terrifying call.
Yeah, you're a dad.
Oh my
What?
dad, what? Live on podcast. Not only do I know the environmental issues that are going on in the world, not to mention current pandemic, but the position I'm in right now, I'm in sort of like a grind sort of mode where I don't
Oh,
really.
yeah, but no, this is independent of this whole,
Okay,
discussion, though.
independent work, yeah. I wouldn't want to. I Since I'm aware of the information around us and the issues that we are yet to solve. I don't want to bring a child up where it's actually, if I view it like that, I'm making the environment a little bit worse, or not. I'm not contributing enough to the solution for me to have a child.
So it's not about their quality of life, it's just about their impact on the world.
Well, it links in with the quality of life because let's say I have a child when they're 20, we're predicted to run out of fish food in 20 years. So that what's going to happen to them in 20 years? It does their quality of life wouldn't be good enough in the future. Maybe
Surely
not.
it's gonna be those in the third world countries that suffer first, though, as always.
Yeah, but that's just me being ignorant to the whole problem then, and that's why we're in this some of this problem because people are just popping out babies and saying, oh, someone else will deal with the issue. Doesn't you having that baby right
Plus, I
now?
think it's an sorry, I just had an idea and I don't want to lose it.
Yeah, go.
You you think about these third world countries. You say that they've got the highest population increase rates, but
Birth rates, yeah.
it's not those it's not those people and those children who are creating these multi-billion-dollar companies that rake the ocean for like anything and anything that's edible. Just mm, making different species of fish extinct every day, that kind of thing. Like, it's not those people who are dumping waste into the ocean and destroying oceanic life, and it's not those people who are creating massive factories which pump pollution into the air straight away. I mean, it's I get the point of they're bringing up the general population, but the impact on the world as a whole, because obviously the whole point of overpopulation, right? The main issue is consuming resources, right?
Yep.
But they're not going to be like they're not going to be buying bird's eyes fish fingers, are they? Like,
No, yeah, of course not. Yeah, but they're gonna have such an overpopulation in Africa. I'm looking at now, so the top 20 in the world, highest average birth rate, are all from India. Sorry, all from Africa, all different countries in Africa. So let's say they keep increasing, their land mass is gonna get smaller and smaller. So let's say like I don't even know the statistic or measurement to use, but the more people that live in that continent, the more they're going to use up their natural resources in that continent to the point where it's going to be completely tarnished. There's going to be no resources to live from that environment, so they're going to have to
yeah,
move elsewhere, and it's just spreading the problem elsewhere rather than tackling it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That's what I mean.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like having children is obviously nice, but it's adding fuel to the fire at this point when it's having five, six, seven. You're adding fuel to the fire.
Do you know anyone that has 5, 6, or 7 children?
No.
I don't. I was just trying to think.
But unfortunately, I think I forgot to mention the sad reason why these countries actually do have higher children is because the mortality rate in those countries is
Oh yeah,
higher. And so the reason why they have more is because they know that some
yeah,
of the time, maybe one or two of their children won't actually survive past the age of, I'm not sure what the age was. I think it was 5 when I learned about it. And so that's just because of poor healthcare, which makes me, think if I was in
and
that country,
quality of life.
would I not want to sort of improve my own country before I, brought someone else into it?
Yeah, but I mean, you say that's like it's easy.
I know
A
it's
lot
not
of those
easy, but that's just
countries, a
my
lot of those
my thinking.
countries have like corrupt governments or
No, of
dictators in
course, yeah,
charge. It's something that's not feasible. Just the same as, I mean, for example, it's ironic because we say like, would they not change their own country? So what? Like, they vote, right? They become an activist and they campaign and stuff like that, right? But the whole idea of democracy, even in our countries, kind of fallen to the wayside nowadays. You look at the way that politicians are cheating the system, embezzling money, lying, breaking the rules, looking out for their friends instead of the population. The democracy is sort of it's not the right word for it. So I think when you look at another country that's deprived of more resources and has far less of a stable government, for example, it's going to be so much harder. So it's one of those issues that sort of seems out of grasp for anyone, I think. And it's just unless there's sort of like this huge united effort or an effort from someone who's got a lot of influence or power, then nothing's gonna be done.
Yeah, but I think maybe I'm just struggling to see it from their in their shoes, and maybe it'd be awesome to talk to someone like who lives in that country and who has had like 5 6 children. What's
Mm.
their reasoning why? If like you said, you brought all those points. It sounds like a pretty horrible place to live. Why would you want to bring someone else up in that place to live with you?
Well, I mean, accidents again, the contraception thing,
Yeah,
and then also,
accents. Yeah,
but then also like that's like it's human nature, isn't it? Like it's human nature to want to repopulate.
yeah. Of course it
It's
is.
like
It's a natural
saying,
instinct. Yeah,
back when we were hunter gatherers and the life expectancy was like 30 or something, and you know you didn't know whether you're going to get crushed by a rock or eaten by a giant shark. They still repopulated, and even when they were living in the most harsh conditions and there was nowhere to hide, there was no like heating or anything like that, they still repopulate because that's just the way it is.
yeah. I can
It's
see that.
nature.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah. It is nature, but it's just annoying. I think from my point of view, because I want to try and understand their sort of thinking, and I guess the only real solution to that would be asking,
Talk to them. Yeah.
talk to them. Yeah, like, get one on the podcast, maybe.
Get one what?
Get one of the mothers or something of like 5 or 6 children.
Okay.
See if they want to come on.
Yeah, if you ever see one around in the street, just be like, I've got to ask you a few questions.
Live interview.
Why did you have your children? Hopefully, you don't get slapped.
Well, I think that's what I mean. That's why I like having these sort of questions because they're almost like frowned upon to ask. Like, or even suggest. Like, it's like hey, how much do you
Taboo.
earn? Like, people are like, oh, I can't tell you how much I earn.
Yeah,
It's like,
a
okay,
taboo. Yeah.
yeah, that's the word, taboo. Yeah. Well, I think it's nice to have these conversations because you won't have them otherwise. What's the issue about talking about them? Why are we frowned upon for talking about them in public? It doesn't. Maybe I'm just being like ignorant, but I think they're viable issues to talk about. The same with overeating. Like people that eat an excessive amount of food. You know why? That obviously you can argue genetics,
No,
blah
just because
blah.
they can.
That's what I mean. It's the ease of access to lots of food, and that's
But then you can't become like. This is all just sort of starting to sound a little bit.
controlling.
No, no, yeah, it's different. It's difficult because then you stray into different systems where you're, giving people a limited rations and limited salary, and then you say, okay, you can only have one child, or you can have no children. You can
Well,
only live in the same house, and everyone lives in the same house. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that was the life of World War Two. Like you were limited to rations per day. You were limited to
no,
all
it's
the
different.
children put. Why
That's
is that
different.
different?
'Cause that's during the World War.
But they
This
were
is
forced to go into that because of a war. Yeah. So,
yes. So I'm talking about like general life. Like you can't just say, okay, y- you're gonna have to live on the bare minimum just because you have to. Like people would, it just
but
wouldn't
that's
work.
that's happened during the pandemic though. For millions of people in the UK, for example, like people who are getting furloughed, they're having to live on the bare minimum with their furlough.
Yeah, but they're getting the furlough, aren't they? So
But that's the bare minimum, right? Like roughly. I guess it depends on how much your furlough was. But
so what are you suggesting?
what am I suggesting? I'm suggesting this topic should just be talked about more. That's what I'm suggesting. I just think some light should be shone or shined upon um,
Shed.
some light should be shed upon this topic. Yeah, but a war was going on. What?
Yeah, talking about the rations.
Yeah, you could argue a war's going on right now against a virus. Like, it's still a war, just not
Yeah,
against.
but that's what I mean. Like, you can't. We're talking about situations where life is of the priority. Life is the primary interest, and it's not like, you know 5 years ago when, as just people living in the general population of the United Kingdom, we weren't fighting in a world war. We weren't at risk of dying, from a bomb or a virus. Do you know what I mean? If you think
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that sort of times, there's no why would you introduce rationing unless it was introducing an extreme system of control to sort of really dictate in a black and white manner what you can have and what you can't have. And that's just, I mean,
mm,
yeah, that's a whole different kind of governing system.
yeah. I guess like just to talk about, I don't want to see, like, say you said earlier, I don't want to be in my high horse, and because you ask myself, what am I doing to help contribute to the environment? You got to ask yourself that question, and you're right. Like, I don't, you know, breed my own chickens, like grow my own eggs, whatever. I'm not like sustainable myself. But I think even just having these conversations makes you less ignorant to the issues that are actually surrounding your life and will affect you in the future, which is a good thing.
I mean, there's stuff that you can do
No, of
as
course
just
there's
like
stuff. Yeah, yeah. I've swapped. I'm not drinking milk anymore. I'm not. Um, I mean, that's the only thing I've started recently doing. I'm drinking oat milk instead, which is the most sort of sustainable.
I've started I don't eat
Milk.
sausages anymore, and I've cut down my consumption of beef.
Perfect. Look at that.
But I think it's just good for everyone. Like, I'm not trying to say like, oh, look at me, I'm so good. I think it's just, it'd be nice if everyone could just sort of do a little thing. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
one or two things.
if they
Yeah,
notice, that like a product that they use like really often has like they do some research on it and just see like, does it have a really dire effects on the well-being of our planet? If it does, maybe consider an alternative. If
yeah,
you have the money, maybe consider spending that a little bit more to pay for a product which looks after the environment. There's eco-friendly alternatives that are slightly more expensive, but the gap is lessening nowadays. And if you have that slightly more exposure of income and you want to be able to sort of make a difference, then why not? you know
yeah. Exactly. I think that's a good point. I'm not sure if you watched the doc. There's some new documentaries on Netflix
I
about
haven't
this
watched the
issue.
one about the sea. No.
There's also a cow one as well. I watched both of them.
Oh, is that okay?
It sort of opens your eyes a bit because you're brought up saying water, save your water, turn off your electricity and stuff, like the main issues. And
Mm.
they show the stats and stuff. I'd have to like research myself to make sure they're correct. But eating meat is actually a lot worse for the environment than you think, compared to you
I
having a
know, I know
shower,
it is
etc.
bad. I know it is bad. To be
Like
fair, like,
really bad. And I was like, wow,
yeah,
it sort of opened my eyes a bit and how ignorant I was towards that problem.
yeah, I know it is bad. Like, that's what I mean. This whole like the whole thing when people like joke about vegans being really sensitive, or like just
Mm,
sort of it's funny. Like, I like I'm someone who joke about a lot of things,
yeah.
but when it gets down to it and when I'm being serious, vegans are they're pretty admirable. They've given up things that they like and they really enjoy, the luxuries,
Hmm.
because for the betterment of the planet. I think it's really good. So if you feel like you want to try it, why not? Like you saying, Spencer, making that leap from going from milk to no milk, that's a pretty big thing. And it takes small steps. Like, you don't have to just one day be like, right, I'm a vegan now, and
You
just
just
never eat
yeah,
anything
yeah.
again. Just sort of weed it out your diet slowly. Like, it's like I'm trying to reduce how much beef I eat. And then the sausages thing was pretty easy because I don't really eat sausages that much now. But now I just buy the vegetarian ones, and the taste is noticeable, but not that much. Like, it doesn't keep me up at night.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you? Do you know what I mean? If it's going to make that much of a difference, especially when we're so helpless in terms of like the larger scale things like overfishing and
Yeah, massively
waste
overfishing.
production.
Yeah.
It's so just doing the little things.
Yeah, like try your best to help the environment. Yeah. I mean, one last point I want to end on is sort of to do with the environmental effects. I think unfortunately this is to do with the older sort of generation. Let's say 70
Mm,
plus.
right.
They sort of know their lives in a way over in terms of they're not going to live for another like 50 years, etc. And so
Sure.
their mindset on waste and food wastage, etc., I think is a little bit. I've seen it myself, like firsthand, is a
Have
lot
you?
different to my one.
Like what?
Where they don't care as much as we do because their time is nearly done on the planet. Um,
Mm,
and so I've seen working weddings and stuff. I've worked a couple hundred weddings. Usually the older generation are like a lot a lot less considerate towards the environment in different ways. Like I said, food wastage is one of them. Driving cars a lot more, etc. These are just little things, but the way they speak about these sometimes these topics, I'm not saying everyone, I'm not trying to generalize, but I've
yeah, of
noticed
course.
that in the older generation, a lot of them tend to ease on the side of not caring as much as we do, and it's understandable. And if I was in their shoes, I probably would be the same. But it's just annoying how
I'd like to think not. It's kind of just
I'd like to think not as
it's
well, but
it's bad. I think as in as a whole, that sort of generation's pretty poor for sort of like how being inconsiderate. Just trying to be mindful of other people. It sort of embodies what's the worst with humanity. Not that was really subtle. Trying, not no, not owning up to issues and not facing problems because they won't be yours. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Just it just sort of embodies that selfishness of humanity, and it's ironic. That's just kind of it is one of the biggest reasons why we are consuming our own planet, and then, well, right now we're sort of projected for a demise because that's
yeah.
just how we are as a species, is how we've evolved, and it's pretty shameful. So
And
yeah, it's
yeah,
sad to see.
that's what I mentioned earlier. People create a problem and say, "Oh, someone else will fix it, or someone else will deal with it later."
Mm.
It's it's frustrating to see, but like you said, it's not viable to implement such rules and regulations worldwide for ethical reasons, for other reasons. So, what is the solution?
Uh, I mean, there isn't one. You just got to hope the people that have influence and power, like the governments and the big companies, they sort of get behind that effort, and they stop going for the cheapest route, and they start going for the most beneficial route for the environment. Or the bigger governments push education courses to those who are less fortunate or less educated, so that they can get the idea of contraception more understood. Or you know I think it's all about informing the masses, and then sort of just building a certain state of mind. So if you just all out force people, and you say, right, no more children, you're not allowed to have children anymore, you're not allowed to have sex anymore, it's not going to work.
Yeah, of course not.
Never going to work ever. And then but if you just sort of slowly implement it, in terms of like, you sort of make it a way of thinking, and you show it in this light, this positive light, like, so if you don't have a child, then you you're not necessarily a better person than someone who does, but you're doing it a little bit. You're thinking about your planet,
Yeah.
and if you decide to give up eating meat, then that's another step. I just think it should just be, I don't know. There should be a lot more information, a lot more encouragement going on.
Yeah, I agree. So just basically shedding light onto this topic is just a simple way to improve it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I agree that, and it has to come from these people in power, and these people with the most influence. But it also needs to come from just your everyday person, like, just like you and I. If we say to someone, oh yeah, I've started doing this, and because of that, and or you just sort of tell someone, like, oh, do you know that eating like a burger a day does this much damage to the environment? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
good
Yeah.
for the people with the most influence and the most power to spread the information, encourage it, but it's also just equally as important to spread it like on a smaller scale, I
Yeah,
think.
exactly. Yeah, word of mouth is the most powerful advertising just due to me
Mm.
and you speaking, we're more trusted sources to each other than some guy running across Cardiff Street saying stop eating meat. Like you trust
Yeah,
me more than some random guy shouting that. But
yeah,
yeah, so just
yeah,
speaking about the topic is actually, like you said, a solution.
yeah, exactly.
Lovely stuff. I think we can end it here.
All right, nice. You not got anything else you need to say?